I sat at the table, staring at the linen napkin carefully folded into the shape of a swan. It was strange, almost too perfect. Someone, probably the catering team, had spent actual time folding that napkin, turning it into this delicate bird with its neck arched in grace. I couldn't help but admire it, as if it was the only thing that made sense in this whole chaotic scene. My stepmother, Destin, was giving a long-winded explanation about the seating arrangements to the newly arrived guests, her voice slicing through the noise in the dining room. I couldn't hear every word, but I knew enough to catch her familiar cadence, the way she made everything sound so important, so significant. Bryn sits here by Senator Gilmore, and Cameron will be beside Dean Hanks. They have so much to discuss about the new Arts Center funding, she said, projecting her voice with the precision of a surgeon. I was 39 years old, and I hadn't lived in this house for over 20 years. Yet, here I was, standing on the outskirts, feeling like a ghost, just a shadow in the background of a life that no longer belonged to me. As I glanced at the table, my eyes met the swan again. It was the only thing in this room that hadn't dismissed me. Through the kitchen window, I could see my half-sister Cameron, her hand resting on the armrest of her chair, the walnut finish gleaming. The kind of chair that cost more than most people's rent, the kind that screamed privilege. And Bryn, my half-brother, was dressed in a suit tailored in Savile Row, the kind you only saw in expensive magazines. I wasn't part of their world anymore, not in any meaningful way. They were 28 and 31, respectively, and neither of them knew what it was like to be invisible in this house. But I did. I had learned that lesson early. "Excuse me," said Jolie, one of the caterers, her voice soft and kind. She touched my elbow, breaking my train of thought. "There's a seat here if you'd like. We have extra." Her kindness was worse than the dismissals. I smiled at her, the smile that I had perfected over 2 decades of surviving in rooms where people either wanted me to disappear or, worse, wanted to see me broken. "Thank you. I'm fine standing," I said, my voice low. I wasn't going to be anyone's charity case, especially not here. Through the service window, I watched my father, Richard Eddings, laughing at something Senator Gilmore had said. My father had married Destin when I was 14, just 6 years after my mother passed away from breast cancer. Destin had 2 children from her first marriage, and within a year, I realized something. I wasn't going to fit in. Not ever. In this family, I was always the extra, the spare, the girl who didn't match the image they had in mind. It wasn't that they actively excluded me, it was more the silence of it, the absence of any effort to make me feel like I belonged. I knew my place, and it wasn't at the table with them. "Government work," I heard Destin saying, her voice cutting through the air with perfect clarity. She knew I could hear her. She always knew. Very stable, I'm sure. Though Jolie has never been entirely clear about what she does. Something administrative, I gather. You know how bureaucracy is. Layers upon layers of middle management. The words hit harder than I expected, more than the casual dismissal. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Like it was beneath her, beneath all of us, this invisible work I did in a world none of them could ever see. I was so tired of the games. The polite smiles, the whispers behind my back, the way they tried to make me small without saying a word. I pulled out my phone, a small act of rebellion against their silent judgment. A text from Marcus Paxton, my second-in-command, flashed on the screen, situation developing. Vargas cartel shipment intercepted at Port Elizabeth. Manifest doesn't match intel. Need your call. I typed back quickly with one thumb, 20 minutes. In the dining room, the conversation shifted. Destin's voice continued to rise as she spoke about the gallery Cameron worked at, the private art sector that required a trust fund just to breathe in. She spoke with a kind of pride that made me want to laugh out loud. Meanwhile, Bryn was discussing some obscure financial investment that sounded so far removed from the world I knew it might as well have been in a different galaxy. But none of it mattered. Because in the world where I belonged, where real power was at play, I wasn't the one trying to impress anyone. I was the one who made things happen, even if they didn't understand a thing about it. My phone buzzed again, but this time, it was more than just a message. It was urgent. Vargas shipment, not just drugs. Precursor chemicals for fentanyl. Enough to produce 50 million lethal doses. This operation has been in development for 18 months. We need to move. I felt the weight of the text settle on me. This was real. This wasn't about dinner parties or who sat next to whom. This was about lives. And here I was, stuck in a kitchen with the staff while my half-siblings discussed their latest art acquisitions like they were living in a bubble, untouchable and above it all. I wanted to scream. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and like this video. If you're still with me, tell me which city you're listening from. I want to see just how far my story has traveled. Let's keep this conversation going. You're not alone in feeling overlooked, or like you're always the one who has to prove yourself. Let's dive back in. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't let them think they had one. I turned to Jolie, who still hovered by the doorway. I'm good. I'll stay on my feet, I said, even though I wasn't. Through the kitchen window, I saw Bryn leaning towards Senator Gilmore, animated, confident, while the senator listened, hanging on every word. How did he do it? How did Bryn play these people so easily? I stood there watching, feeling the familiar sting of being the invisible one, the one whose opinions and ideas never seemed to matter. Another buzz. Another text. Another piece of the world I couldn't ignore. This one from Paxton, they found Vargas' brother. He's asking for you by name. My heart pounded. I felt it. This was the moment. The moment where the two worlds, this ridiculous dinner and the high-stakes world of national security, would collide. As the minutes ticked by, I realized that everything was about to change. But I couldn't let them see. Not yet. Not until the right moment. But here's the question I want to leave you with: what would you do in my shoes? Would you stay silent, letting them decide your worth, or would you stand up and claim the life you've fought for? Keep listening, because things are about to get real. I could feel the tension building. There was a constant hum in the air, as if the entire evening was just waiting for something to break, for someone to say or do the thing that would shatter the fragile image of perfection Destin had worked so hard to maintain. I glanced back at my phone, the message from Marcus still sitting there. The urgency of the situation started to sink in, pulling me out of the strange fog I'd been in since I arrived. The caterers were clearing away the main course plates. The smell of roast lamb and rosemary still lingered, but I could hardly focus on the food. All I could think about was what was going on outside of this gilded cage, the lives that were hanging in the balance. The life of a U.S. senator, the lives of countless citizens, and the future of my entire operation, it all came down to a few minutes, a few decisions, that could tip the scales in the wrong direction. The moment I turned to leave, I felt it, the weight of all the eyes on me. The glances that weren't so subtle. The whispers that started up the moment I stood from my spot. No one had to say anything. I knew exactly what they were thinking. They always thought it. She's just the government employee, the one who doesn't belong in their world. I was tired of it. Tired of standing on the edges, like some character in a story no one cared to read. I wanted to show them who I really was. But there was no time. This wasn't about them. It never had been. I stepped into the kitchen, the sounds of laughter and chatter from the dining room muffling behind the walls. The moment I crossed into the kitchen, I grabbed my bag and checked my watch. I could feel the seconds slipping away, counting down. It would be close. But I could make it. Jolie, I called, looking at the young caterer who had been kind to me earlier. I'll need to step out for a while. Please let anyone who asks know that I had to take care of something urgent. She looked at me with those warm, sympathetic eyes, like she was going to say something else. But she didn't. She just nodded. I could tell she had no idea who I really was. No idea what I was capable of. "Thank you," I said quietly, then stepped out through the back door. The late summer evening air hit me like a breath of fresh air after being suffocated by their expectations all night. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in, the distant hum of the city, the smell of flowers still hanging on the evening breeze, the gentle rustling of the leaves in the garden. I needed this space. To think, to breathe, to escape the noise for just a moment. I dialed Marcus immediately. The phone rang twice before he answered. "Talk to me," I said, my voice calm, but with a slight edge. "We have Vargas' brother," Marcus said, no preamble. He was supervising the shipment personally. "He's asking for you by name, Jolie. He knows who you are. Wants a deal." The ground beneath my feet seemed to shift. The senator, the dean, my father, Destin, they were all completely unaware that a key player in one of the most dangerous criminal operations in the Western Hemisphere was about to hand himself over to me. All while they sat in their ivory tower, blissfully ignorant of the reality that was about to hit them. "Where is he?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Federal holding facility," Marcus answered. "He's requesting to deal at the federal level. Says whatever he knows, it's big enough to burn his whole family to save himself." I closed my eyes for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. He was scared. And when people like him were scared, they were dangerous. But the fact that he was asking for me? That meant something else. Something I had earned, respect, even from the people who lived in the shadows. "Tell him I'll be there in 40 minutes, I said, my voice unwavering. I hung up and stood there for a moment longer, feeling the rush of adrenaline course through me. But before I could take another step, the familiar buzzing of my phone reminded me that this wasn't just about Vargas or the cartel. It was about the life I had left behind, the family I had tried to be part of for so long. The one that had never seen me for who I was. "Are you still with me? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and let me know if you've ever had to prove your worth to people who couldn't see you for who you truly are. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground." Now, let's keep this story rolling, because things are about to take a turn. I walked back inside the house, my mind spinning, but my steps sure. It was all happening now. I could feel it in my bones, the collision between the world I had been living in, quietly, on the sidelines, and the one I had been working to create for years. A world where I was respected, where my skills and decisions held weight. But for now, I couldn't focus on that. Not yet. I had to deal with the mess waiting inside. I stepped back into the dining room, and the moment I crossed that threshold, everything froze. Senator Gilmore's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his whole demeanor shifted. The pleasant, professional politician became a man who had just been told that the world was no longer as secure as he thought. Without saying a word, he stood up and walked toward the back of the house, where I could already hear the faint sounds of panic in his voice. The dean was next, pulling out his own phone, mumbling some sort of apology to Destin. But she wasn't listening. She was too busy trying to figure out why the perfect evening she'd orchestrated was unraveling before her eyes. I stood in the back of the kitchen, watching through the service window, knowing exactly what was happening. The two men were coming my way, not knowing that they were about to walk into a trap of their own making. They thought I was just the administrative assistant. The nobody. But now, they were about to find out who I really was. Destin's voice carried through the walls. "Senator, is everything all right?" I smiled, just a little. Because everything was about to change. And she would never see it coming. It's funny how life works, isn't it? The moments when you least expect it, everything shifts. You think you've been invisible for so long, and then, boom, everyone has no choice but to see you. But the question is, how do you handle that moment? Do you let it consume you, or do you step into the power you've always had? Stay tuned, because in the next part, I'm about to show them exactly who I am. The stillness of the dining room after Senator Gilmore and Dean Hanks left the table was deafening. A silence, thick with unspoken questions, hung in the air. My father's voice was the first to break it. "Jolie, you're the DEA administrator?" His words were slow, measured, as if he were trying to digest the impossible. His eyes, once so distant, now held a flicker of confusion, of realization. But there was something else too, something darker. Something I couldn't place. I nodded. Yes. For 3 years. His brow furrowed. 3 years, and all this time, you've never said a word? It wasn't the first time he'd asked something like that. The questions he never asked before, the ones he never seemed to care enough to voice when I was younger, suddenly seemed to matter. But I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of an easy answer. I wasn't about to explain why I had never shared this side of myself with him. He wouldn't understand. "I've been with the agency for 16 years in total," I said, my voice flat, trying to distance myself from the flood of memories that came rushing in with his words. I couldn't discuss the details. I still can't. Destin, standing at the center of it all, blinked, clearly stunned. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She looked like she had just been slapped in the face. Her hands clenched the edges of her wine glass, her knuckles white. And yet, in the midst of this sudden upheaval, there was a part of me that wanted to laugh. They hadn't seen it coming, hadn't understood a single thing about me all these years. "You said you worked in government," Cameron said, her voice barely above a whisper. I could hear the disbelief in her tone. She had always been the perfect daughter, the one who played by the rules, who wore her success like a badge. And now, she couldn't quite reconcile the version of me she had created in her mind with the one standing here in front of her. "I do work in government," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Just not in the way you thought." Bryn, still in his pristine Seville row suit, looked like he had just been knocked off balance. His gaze flickered from me to the others, trying to process what was happening. I could see the gears turning in his mind, but he didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His face said it all. Destin's voice, sharp and calculating, cut through the tension. "All this time, you've been lying to us?" It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. "No. I've been exactly who I said I was. You just decided that wasn't good enough for you." I didn't wait for her response. I couldn't. The air in the room had thickened to the point where it was hard to breathe. Everyone was looking at me, their eyes full of disbelief and questions I didn't intend to answer. But I wasn't here to satisfy their curiosity. I was here because of a far greater responsibility. And that responsibility wasn't going to wait. I turned toward the back door, my hand reaching for my bag. The movement was almost automatic, as if my body knew what was next. I had spent too many years pretending to be someone I wasn't, trying to fit into a mold they had created for me, trying to force myself into their world. But I had outgrown that. It was time to step into the truth. We've all had moments where we've been underestimated, where the world saw one version of us and we knew it wasn't the truth. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to step into your own power and show people who you really are? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more of my journey, and stay with me, because we're just getting started. I stepped outside into the evening air again, away from the laughter and chaos of the house, the constant hum of expectation and rejection that followed me like a shadow. I needed a moment to collect myself before I dived back into the storm that was waiting for me. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs, the tension of the evening finally beginning to ebb away. The truth was, I had been living a double life for far too long. But now that the mask had come off, I could feel the weight lifting, even if it was only for a brief moment. The world outside was still. The house, quiet behind me, felt like a far-off memory, like it belonged to someone else. I was done with playing small. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. "The situation's escalating. Vargas' brother is demanding to speak with you in person. He's ready to deal. This is your move, Jolie. I clicked the phone off and slipped it into my pocket, my thoughts already shifting to the task at hand. I had a job to do. And this time, I wasn't going to let anything, or anyone, get in the way. You know, life has a way of throwing us curveballs when we least expect it. One moment, you're a nobody in the eyes of the people who are supposed to matter most, and the next? You're the one holding all the cards. But the real question is, what do you do when everything you've worked for, everything you've built, is suddenly in front of you? Keep following, because in the next part, I'm about to take control in a way they never saw coming. I walked back into the house, feeling the weight of every single pair of eyes that followed my every move. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the house itself was holding its breath. It was like they all expected me to explain, to apologize, but I wasn't going to give them that. Not anymore. The years of pretending to be something I wasn't, someone who could fit into their picture-perfect world, were over. As I entered the kitchen, I found my father standing by the counter, his back to me. He didn't turn around when I walked in, didn't acknowledge me. But I could feel the tension radiating from him. He was lost in thought, his mind working overtime to process the truth that had just been dropped on him. I didn't have time to deal with him. Not now. I had to finish what I started. I pulled my phone back out and checked the time. The clock was ticking. Paxton, I said, hitting speed dial. The line picked up almost immediately. We're ready, he said, his voice steady, but I could hear the urgency behind it. Vargas' brother is asking for you. We've got a transport set up, and the feds are ready to move. Get the deputy director on standby. I want everything secured before I leave, I said, my tone sharp, precise. Every move had to be calculated. One slip-up, one mistake, and it could all fall apart. I didn't wait for a response before I ended the call. I could feel my pulse quickening, but I kept my movements slow, deliberate. The adrenaline was kicking in. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I looked up and saw Brent standing in the doorway, his eyes fixed on me, searching for an explanation that I wasn't going to give him. His gaze held something in it, disbelief, perhaps, or maybe confusion. But beneath all of that, I could see the tiniest hint of respect. He had always underestimated me. But now, as he stood there in his expensive suit, watching me handle everything with the quiet confidence that had taken me years to build, I could see that he was starting to realize something. I wasn't the one who needed to explain. Jolie, he said, his voice faltering slightly. You can't just. You're right, I cut him off, the words coming out sharper than I intended. I can't just do this, can I? I can't just show up and tell you everything, can I? You wouldn't get it. I turned away from him before he could respond. There was no time for his questions, no time for his doubt. He wasn't part of this world. He had never been. He'd never had to make hard choices or deal with the kind of things I dealt with every single day. I moved swiftly, reaching for my coat and bag. I'll be back later. Don't wait up. As I stepped toward the door, my father finally spoke, his voice low, almost apologetic. Jolie. I paused, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I did, I might lose the strength I had built over the years. I might fall back into the trap they had set for me all this time. I know, I said quietly, without looking back. You never saw me, but I've always been here. And then, without another word, I stepped out into the night. I know this is getting intense, but I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated or made to feel invisible, only to prove everyone wrong? Tell me about it in the comments. And if you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more of my story. Trust me, the best is yet to come. The night air was crisp, and as I walked to my car, the weight of everything seemed to settle into my bones. The world I had spent so many years trying to escape from was now the same one I had to face head-on. I had never imagined it would be like this. As I slid into the driver's seat, I took a moment to breathe. The city was alive, buzzing with energy, a stark contrast to the quiet chaos I had just left behind. I glanced at the rearview mirror, watching the lights of my father's house fade into the distance. It was over. The lies, the pretense, it was all gone. But I wasn't done yet. I had a mission to finish, a plan that had been set into motion months ago. There was still work to do, and I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. I drove through the city streets, my mind running 1,000 miles a minute. Every part of me was focused, sharp. This was the moment. No more hiding, no more pretending to be someone I wasn't. And I couldn't help but think of them all back there, Destin, my father, Bryn, Cameron, sitting at their table, eating their expensive food, discussing their lofty ideals while I was out here, handling the real business. The real power. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up without hesitation. "Paxton," I said, my voice cool. "We've got eyes on the senator," Paxton said. "His security detail is in place, and we've already begun the process of moving Vargas' brother. Everything's locked down." "Good," I replied. "Keep me posted." As I hung up, I could feel it, this strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. For so long, I had tried to fit into a world that wasn't mine, tried to make myself small so that they could feel comfortable. But not anymore. This world was mine now. And I would no longer let anyone dictate my place in it. So, here's where I ask you, what would you do if the world you'd always wanted to be a part of suddenly turned its back on you? Would you keep fighting for a seat at their table, or would you carve your own path? Stick with me for the next part, because the storm is coming, and I'm about to make them wish they had never underestimated me. The city was alive around me, the lights flickering like fireflies as I navigated through the streets, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Everything was in motion, everything was moving fast, but inside, I felt calm. Calm in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just because the truth had finally come out. No, it was something deeper, something that had been building for years, something that had been simmering beneath the surface of every interaction, every word, every look that had told me I wasn't enough. Now, they were going to see who I really was. And they weren't going to be able to look away. I pulled up to the federal holding facility, the familiar hum of the security gates rolling open as I flashed my credentials. The world I had been hiding from for so long had led me right here, to this moment. And now, I had a choice to make, keep playing their game, or play my own. The game of the powerful, the dangerous, the ones who called the shots. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance, my heels clicking against the concrete. The chill of the night air brushed against my skin, but there was no hesitation in my step. I had been in far worse situations, and I was still standing. And here? In this moment? I was untouchable. Inside, I was met by Marcus Paxton, who was already waiting with a few of my trusted agents. "Everything's in place," he said with a nod, his face tight with focus. "Vargas' brother is in interrogation. He's waiting for you." I nodded back, then took a breath. This was it. There would be no more secrets, no more walls. Just raw truth. The truth that they had tried to keep hidden, the truth that would shake everything they thought they knew about me, and everything I had been to them. We moved through the sterile hallways, the sound of footsteps echoing in the empty space. I felt my heart beat in time with the rhythm of the halls. The closer we got to the interrogation room, the more it hit me. I had spent so many years trying to hide in plain sight, trying to pretend that my life didn't matter to them. But I was done pretending. We reached the door, and one of the agents gave a quick nod before opening it. Inside, Vargas' brother was sitting at the table, his hands cuffed to the chair, his eyes flicking toward the door the moment I stepped inside. He knew who I was. "Administrator Bannister," he said, his voice low, almost respectful, but with a trace of fear beneath it. "I've heard of you." I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. I simply sat down across from him, my eyes locking with his. You want to deal? I asked, my voice as cold and sharp as a blade. He nodded, visibly shaking, but trying to maintain some semblance of control. I have information that can take down the whole network. The Vargas cartel's operation. Everything. I leaned forward, just slightly, enough to make him feel the weight of my presence. You're not the only one with information. I've been tracking your family for years. You want to survive this? You'll need to do more than talk. His eyes widened. For a moment, he looked like he might break, but then, he straightened, his gaze hardening. I'll tell you everything. But I want protection. I want my family safe. I sat back in my chair, considering it. I wasn't here for petty deals or weak bargains. This was bigger than him. This was about ending a legacy of violence and corruption. And it would take more than just his cooperation to bring it down. You'll get what you deserve. No more. No less. I stood up, the decision made. I wasn't going to make any promises to him. But I knew one thing, his cooperation would be the start of a whole new chapter, for both of us. This is the moment, the crossroads where everything changes. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a position where you had to stand up, take control, and make a hard decision? Tell me about it in the comments. If you're loving this journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of standing your ground. Things are heating up, and we're not done yet. I turned and walked out of the room, my mind already focused on the next steps. I had done what was necessary, but I couldn't afford to get comfortable. Not yet. As I walked back through the sterile halls of the facility, I could feel the weight of what I had just done settling over me. It wasn't just about taking down Vargas and his family, it was about showing the world who I was, who I had always been. The woman who had been hiding in plain sight, the one they had ignored for years. The one they had underestimated. I was done being small. Done being the forgotten one. I stepped outside into the cool night air, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world slip away just a little. But this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. As I got into my car, I pulled out my phone. There was a text waiting for me from Paxton. Gilmore's security detail has been compromised. They're moving him now. You ready to take this to the next level? I typed back, my fingers steady. We're moving. Keep him safe. I'll be there in 30. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I couldn't help but smile. Everything I had been working for, all the years of silence, of being invisible, it was finally paying off. And as I drove toward the next stage of this mission, I realized something. I wasn't just reclaiming my life. I was rewriting it. So, what do you think? What would you do in my shoes? Would you stand up, take charge, and show the world exactly what you're capable of? Or would you stay on the sidelines, letting them dictate your worth? Stay with me for the next chapter, because it's about to get even more intense, and you won't want to miss it.